The good news of Jesus as written in Mark.
Did you hear it? Did you see it?
Did you see it? Did you hear it?
Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you hear it? Did you hear it?
Did you hear it? Did you see it?
It's all
bad
bad
news.
news. Did you hear it? Did you see it?
Did you see it?
Did you hear it? Did you see? Did you see? Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you see it?
It's
all bad news.
Did
you hear it? Did you see it?
Did
you see it? Did you hear it? Did you see? Did you see? Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear it? Did you see it?
It's
all bad news. Jesus and the disciples went to Gethsemane.
Did he say anything?
Sit down here while I go pray.
Who was with him?
Peter, James, and John.
How was he feeling?
Very distressed and troubled.
What else did he say?
My heart is filled with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch.
Well, then what happened?
Can you please?
Jesus went a little further off and fell to the ground, praying, God, you have the power to do all things. Take this cup away from me. But let be not my will, but your will. When Jesus returned, he found them asleep. He said to Peter, asleep, Simon? Could you not stay awake for even an hour? Be on guard and pray that you not be put to the test. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
He didn't say that to Peter.
Yes, he did.
Peter wouldn't have fallen asleep.
But he did.
It says right there.
It gets worse. Going back again, Jesus began to pray in the same words. Upon returning, Jesus found them asleep once again. They could not keep their eyes open, nor did they know what to say to him. He returned a third time and said, still sleeping? Still taking your rest?
Well, James and John have always been a bad influence.
But Jesus continues, it will have to do. So regardless, Jesus was clearly okay with it, especially since he moves on with, the hour is upon us. The chosen one is being handed into the clutches of evildoers. Get up, let us be going. Look, here comes my betrayer. While Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, he came up accompanied by a crowd carrying swords and clubs. They had been sent by the chief priests, the religious scholars, and the elders.
Why would Judas be with them?
The betrayer had arranged this signal for them.
Betrayer? That's not fair.
Whomever I embrace is the one. Arrest him and take him away under guard. Judas went directly to Jesus, embraced him, and said, Rabbi! At this, they laid hands on Jesus and arrested him.
I don't believe that.
One of the bystanders drew a sword and struck the high priest's attendant, cutting off an ear. Rumor has it that it was Peter.
There's no proof.
Well, Jesus then said, why have you come to arrest me with swords and clubs as though I were a robber? I was within your reach daily, teaching in the temple precincts, yet you never arrested me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled.
Oh, with that, all the disciples deserted Jesus and fled.
Following Jesus was a youth wearing nothing but a linen cloth, whom they also tried to arrest, but fled naked, leaving the cloth behind.
Then they led Jesus off to the high priest, and all the chief priests, elders, and religious scholars gathered together. Yeah.
Peter followed at a distance right into the high priest's courtyard, where he found a seat with the temple guard and began to warm himself at the fire. Breaking news.
Breaking news, 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 breaking news.
The chief priests with the whole Sanhedrin were busy soliciting testimony against Jesus that might lead to his death, but they could not find any.
Many gave false testimony against Jesus, but their stories did not agree.
The high priest stood up before the court and began to interrogate Jesus. Have you no answer to what these people are testifying against you?
But Jesus remained silent and made no reply.
Once again, the high priest interrogated him. "Are you the Messiah, the only begotten of the Blessed One?"
Jesus replied, "I am, and you will see the chosen one seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." That's what Daniel said would happen.
At that, the high priest tore his robes and said, "What further need do we have of witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What is your verdict?"
They all said Jesus was guilty and condemned him to death.
Some of them began to spit on Jesus.
They blindfolded him and hit him, saying, "Prophesy."
The guards began to beat him too, while Peter was...
Down in the courtyard, one of the attendants of the high priest came along. When she noticed Peter seated along near the fire, she said, "You too were with Jesus of Nazareth." Peter said, "I do not know what you are talking about." At that moment, a rooster crowed. The woman started to tell the bystanders he is one of them. Once again, Peter denied it. A little later, the bystander said to him, "You are certainly one of them. You are a Galilean, are you not?" Peter began to curse and swore, "I do not even know who you are talking about." The cock crowed a second time.
And Peter rushed away, weeping.
James and John.
Oh! Soon as it was daybreak, the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin reached a decision. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate.
Pilate?
Who interrogated him.
No.
"Are you the king of the Jews?" he said. Jesus responded, "You're the one who's asking it." Pilate interrogated Jesus again. But to Pilate's astonishment, Jesus made no further response.
Now, whenever there was a festival, Pilate would release for them one prisoner, anyone they asked for. There was a prisoner named Barabbas.
Oh, Barabbas.
Who was jailed along with the rioters who committed murder in the uprising.
I don't know Barabbas.
Yeah. When the crowd came to ask that Pilate honor the custom, Pilate rejoined, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?"
Pilate was aware, of course, that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over.
But the chief priests incited the crowd to have him release Barabbas instead.
So now you're on the side of the chief priests?
Pilate again asked them, "What am I to do with one you call the king of the Jews?" The people shouted back, "Crucify him." "Why?" Pilate asked. "What crime has he committed?" But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them.
And after having Jesus scourged, handed him over to be crucified.
Scourged and crucified?
Breaking news.
Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Where is it? Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking. Aha!
The soldiers led Jesus away into the hall known as the Praetorium.
They dressed Jesus in royal purple, then wove a crown of thorns and put it on him.
They began to salute him. "All hail, King of the Jews." They kept striking Jesus on the head with a reed, spitting at him, and kneeling in front of him, pretending to pay homage. When they'd finished mocking him, they stripped him of the purple and dressed him in his own clothes. Then they led him out to be crucified.
A passerby named Simon of Cyrene was coming in from the fields.
The soldiers pressed him into service to carry Jesus' cross.
Then they brought Jesus to the site of Golgotha, which means place of the skull.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Breaking news, breaking news.
They tried to give him wine drugged with myrrh, but he would not take it.
Then they nailed him to the cross and divided up his garments by rolling dice for them to see what each should take.
It was about 9 a.m. The inscription listing the charge read, "The King of the Jews."
With Jesus they crucified 2 robbers, one at his right and one at his left.
People going by insulted Jesus, shaking their heads and saying, "Save yourself now by coming down from that cross."
The chief priests and the religious scholars also joined in and jeered. He saved others, but he cannot save himself.
Those who had been crucified with him hurled the same insult.
When noon came, darkness fell on the whole countryside and lasted until about 3 in the afternoon.
At 3, Jesus cried out in a loud voice,
My
God,
God,
my
my
God,
God,
why
have you forsaken me?"
A few bystanders who heard it remarked, "Listen, he is calling on Elijah."
Someone soaked a sponge in sour wine and stuck it on a reed to try and make Jesus drink.
saying, "Let us see if Elijah comes to take him down."
Did you see them? Did you hear them? Did you hear them? Did you see them? Did you see? Did you see? Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear them? Did you see them? There might be good news. The centurion who stood guard over Jesus, seeing how he died, declared clearly this was God's own. There were also some women present looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary of Magdala, Mary the mother of James the younger, and Joseph, and Salome. And as it grew dark, Joseph from Arimathea arrived. He was waiting for the reign of God, and he gathered up courage and sought an audience with Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate released the body to him. Then, having bought a linen shroud, Joseph took the body of Jesus down, wrapped him in the linen, and laid him in a tomb which had been cut out of the rock.
Finally, he rolled a large stone across the entrance of the tomb. Meanwhile, Mary of Magdala and Mary, the mother of Joseph, were looking on where Jesus had been laid.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, will you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me.
The
Gospel
Gospel
of the Savior.